Level 1. The Patsy. You're in a Hawthorne studio. The apartment at 2:47 a.m. An encrypted message hits your burner. The text is simple. Upload the files. 5,000 Bitcoin. Delete everything. You need the money. Rent's 3 months overdue. Your car repoed. A USB drive was dropped at your door. You don't look inside. You're moving data through a VPN chain you barely understand. From point A to point B, you're uploading compromised satellite data to a server farm in Shenzhen, handing over Patriot missile algorithms. You think you're running digital errands? You're not. You're a crash dummy in the first fracture. Every world war starts with people like you. Broke, desperate, moving pieces on a board you can't see. The $5,000 hits your wallet by sunrise. You delete everything. But the NSA flagged your IP 40 minutes ago. Most people think wars start with missiles. They don't. They start with you. What you just did will create a body count you'll never hear about. You're small time. This is where it gets structural. Level 2. The Fixer. You're no longer uploading files. You're in a Marina del Rey office park, running a consulting firm specializing in geopolitical risk. Business cards say crisis management. What you actually do is buy and sell the patsies. You recruit them through encrypted Reddit boards. You weaponize their rage. Managing 14 assets across California, uploading malware. Others spread disinformation about a U.S. carrier group firing on civilian vessels near Taiwan Strait. Footage deep-faked in-house, using tools from a Russian outfit. You're getting $40,000 per operation. You think you're playing both sides. But the man who hired you works for a private military contractor. They're not preventing WW3, they're timing it. The real money is in the ignition window. You pushed the Taiwan Strait incident into 6 news cycles. You just moved the doomsday clock 90 seconds closer. You thought you were just managing information. Instead, you're setting the stage for kinetic action. But you're still middle management. This is where the real operators enter. Level 3. The Broker. You're on the 38th floor of a DTLA high-rise at 11 p.m. You don't deal in information anymore. You deal in leverage. Your firm brokers backroom deals. Between nation-states who can't be seen talking, a Saudi prince wants oil prices to spike. A Taiwanese exec needs factory guarantees. A Pentagon colonel needs supplies in Guam. You make it happen. Your cut is 8% of every transaction. Last month, you cleared $1.2 million. This month, you brokered a deal for $4,000 a T for anti-tank weapons to a humanitarian NGO. They'll be in insurgents' hands in Mindanao, destabilizing the region as U.S. forces reinforce Taiwan. You shorted the S&P 500, went long on Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman. 3 burner phones, 2 passports, a go bag in San Pedro. You're not worried about getting caught. You're worried about getting UST. The people above you aren't brokers. They're architects. Once the shooting starts, brokers become liabilities. That was the executive level. But this is where it gets legislative. Where the killing gets signed into law. Level 4. The Senator's Hand. You're Deputy Chief of Staff to a Senator on the Armed Services Committee. You sit in D.C. hearing rooms, but fly to San Francisco every weekend to meet donors. Your job? Ensure the right language ends up in the National Defense Authorization Act. This year, you added 14 words reclassifying autonomous defense response protocols. It sounds boring, but it gives AI-controlled U.S. missile frigates authority to fire. Without human override, if Chinese vessels cross a certain latitude line, you got this from a Raytheon lobbyist. 3 weeks later, a Chinese destroyer crosses that line during a typhoon. The system fires. 17 Chinese sailors die. Beijing retaliates, sinking a resupply vessel. 43 Americans die. You watch it on CNN. The senator calls it an act of war, demands retaliation. His approval jumps. Defense contractor, donors wire, $2.3 million. You did it? Not with a gun, but with 14 words. You thought policy was the ceiling. It's not. This is where the real doctrine gets written. In bunkers you'll never see. Level 5. The Pentagon Planner. You're inside a CIF at Vandenberg, staring at a classified simulation running for 11 months. Your title, Strategic Operations Director. Your job, wargaming the endgame. You don't start wars, you finish them. Running Operation Sunset Fracture for a full-spectrum conflict with China over Taiwan, the simulation is beautiful in its violence. First 72 hours, carrier strike groups converge. Guam gets hit with DF-26 hypersonic missiles. You lose 9,000 personnel before a shot is fired. Week 2. 3 Gorges Dam hit with a bunker buster. 14 million Chinese civilians die. Week 4. Beijing threatens nuclear response. You activate the Dead Hand Protocol. Pre-authorized nuclear retaliation triggers. You don't run this for prevention, but for optimization. Your job. Ensure the U.S. loses fewer people. strategic triage. History will call it genocide. Making sure body bags are pre-positioned at Travis Air Force Base. You sleep 4 hours a night. You haven't seen your kids in 3 months? You don't feel like a monster. You feel like a professional. That was the tactical layer. But tactics don't start wars. Capital does. Level 6. The fund manager. You're in a Palo Alto hedge fund office managing $8.4 billion. You don't care about flags, you care about volatility arbitrage. Your algorithm tracks troop movements, satellite imagery, export restrictions, SWIFT, freezes. It predicted the Taiwan crisis 6 weeks ago. You've positioned your portfolio beautifully. Long defense contractors, short Chinese equities, long gold, uranium, lithium, short shipping indices, long cybersecurity stocks. When the first missiles fly, your fund will gain $340 million in the first week. 15 funds like yours are making the same bets. Combined, you control $160 billion. That much money doesn't just predict wars, it incentivizes them. You're on calls with people who brief the Senate, funding think tanks, seeding media narratives. You don't pull triggers. You just make sure people believe war is necessary, noble, and too late to stop. You're not evil. You're just liquid. You thought money was power. It's not. Ideology is. And this is where it gets theological. Level 7. The think tank prophet. You run a foreign policy think tank, funded by defense contractors, Gulf monarchies, Silicon Valley. You don't lobby, you construct reality. Your fellows write op-eds in the New York Times, testify before Congress, appear on NPR, explaining why conflict with China is inevitable. You don't say you want war, you say it's already happening. Gray zone conflict. Publishing reports like the new Cold War in Taiwan and the threshold of irreversibility. You create the intellectual architecture that makes war feel rational. Hosting closed-door briefings. You don't tell them what to think. You tell them how to think. Giving them the language. They believe the war is someone else's fault. China's aggression, history's inevitability. You sleep soundly. You're not a warmonger. You're a realist. Violence isn't a failure. It's a tool. That was influence. This is command. Level 8. The Situation Room. You're the National Security Advisor. The President is on your left. The Joint Chiefs on screen. A Chinese submarine just sank. A U.S. destroyer in the Philippine Sea. 68 Americans dead. The President looks at you. Options? You present 3. Proportional response. Sink one of theirs. Escalatory. Hit their naval base in Hainan. Diplomatic pause. Factional freeze. Unsecurity Council. You speak in probabilities. 78% chance Beijing retaliates if we choose option 2. You don't mention your past, or the $6 billion your former firm stands to make, or your exhaustion, paranoia. You just present the options. The President chooses option 2. You draft the execute order. 17 minutes later, a B-2 bomber drops a GBU-57 bunker buster on a Chinese sub-pen. 400 Chinese sailors die. Beijing activates strategic reserves. You just started World War III. Not because you wanted to, because you were the last person in the room. Every option was a losing move. You pour yourself a bourbon at 6 a.m. You don't feel powerful. You feel trapped. That was command. This is consequence. Level 9. The Architect. You don't have a title? You're not in any government. You're watching the world burn. Founder of a private military corporation. You brokered the arms deals. Seeded disinformation. Funded the think tanks. Installed people in the Situation Room. You didn't start the war. You designed the conditions that made it inevitable. Your company will make $14 billion. You'll rebuild what gets destroyed. Secure lithium mines. Manage refugee logistics. Sell surveillance systems to both sides. You are untouchable. No allegiances. You don't sleep in the same bed twice. Don't trust your security team. Don't talk to your children. You won. And winning feels like absolute isolation. You started this to control the world. Now you realize the world is uncontrollable. And you're just another piece on the board. Somewhere in Hawthorne, a 23-year-old stares at a burner phone. A new message just came in. Upload the files. $5,000 Bitcoin. Delete everything. He needs the money. Rent's overdue. He doesn't ask questions. He never does. The cycle starts again.